Okay, that's now recording. So I'm Rob, Alex. We've planned it so that I'm sort of leading it, but Alex is going to chip in at various points which he knows more about. And the what we're doing is an initial exploratory interview to establish what we can then go back over with a film crew.
Right.
You know, for the purpose of which is to have that kind of classic talking head shot for use in the exhibition.
Talking about that, do you know the BBC Two TV programme that analyses landmark albums and remixes things like that? You know the programme?
Yes.
You know they film on a Sabbath?
Oh, right. Okay.
Paranoid.
Right.
But it was never shown because a certain person was awkward about it.
Right.
But apparently it's now available to buy. It's never been shown on TV, but you can now buy it on DVD.
Oh, right, okay.
I found that last week. And that's got lots of talking heads about Sabbath.
Right, so that's something
about the particular album, so that's,
yeah, we'll track that down. Yeah. Okay.
So if you can't track it down, I can find out who's released it because they wrote to me about it because I'm on it.
Right.
So.
Okay, great. Well, I imagine you're on lots of things actually. Yeah, because it hasn't been difficult to sort of find out, to see your name mentioned in a lot of commentary about music in Birmingham. I first sort of heard of Big Bear when I first moved to Birmingham and was trying to book a gig at the Ivy Bush for my band just down the road. And I wondered, well, there was a chap in the bar at the time and we started talking. I think his name was John Hillier.
No, his name was John Keatley.
John Keatley.
Yes, right. he kept that business going, the Irish business going for many years. He was drunk.
Right, okay.
Was he?
He was very talkative.
and slobby.
Right.
Very loose.
He was telling me about the sort of the tribute band business and how that's probably what I should be more interested in rather than doing my own material and booking gigs in pubs. You know, he was more sort of you should be doing functions, not gigs in pubs.
That's right.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So that sounds like John Hemming.
I remember him giving me a card, and I if I had
Les Hemming.
No, it's definitely a John.
John Keatley sounds right then. Or John Tully. What do you say?
This is 1992.
What did you say? What name did you give him? John?
I gave him John Hillier. I said
Hillier?
John Hillier at first, but it's a long time ago. As I say, when I first moved to Birmingham.
Okay. What is that?
1992.
Okay. Because the band we just about to celebrate 25 years with, managing them, did their first gigs there.
Right.
That was 25 years ago, whatever that was. And we used to do every Thursday night then. And even then, back then, we'd take £1,000 on the door on a Thursday night.
Up in the Ivy Bush?
Yeah. Upstairs, yeah.
I remember we didn't make a penny.
We had people standing on the stairs.
Right.
Paying a £5 to stand on the stairs.
Right. Yeah, it's a good room.
Very good.
Good room up there.
It's sort of round. It feels roundish. It's not round. It's everywhere's sort of neat and comfortable, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, well, that in mind, I wanted to start with the locomotive.
Okay.
Tell us a bit about your involvement with the locomotive, and then move on to how you were a photographer for Midland Beat. Midland Beat.
Yeah. Where do you want to start? Locomotive. I don't know when locomotive came about, really. I came out of the Air Force. I did 3 years in the Air Force in air traffic control. I came back to England, ended up in Skegness for a little while, and then I went back to Spain again. I think I must have got back to Birmingham about 1962, 63. Some good bands around those days. The band that everybody listened to, those was called the Modern Airs. Cheesy name, they're a cracking band, one of the best pop bands I've ever heard. And I was playing in jazz bands, and sort of along the way, we became a locomotive. You've gone back beyond memory. I know what we were. We were blues hounds, or Everett's blues hounds. Then Everett left. He didn't like the touring, and we became the Blues Hounds, and we toured as the Blues Hounds and as locomotive for, I don't know, up to 1968, about 6 years I suppose on the road. We became locomotive because we weren't really a blues band. We were sort of Kansas City blues, 1940s Count Basie swing it was, but with a singer like Jimmy Rushing, that sort of thing. We went through a few singers over the period, and the band was pretty stable as a whole. They produced lots of players that went on to do other things. Our second drummer was Mike Kelly, who went to Spooky Tooth and Artwoods and things like that. And Mike's still around. He wasn't around, he's now come back again. Really great player. He replaced John Bonham. John Bonham went to Zeppelin in Locomotive. And then, after he went to join Led Zeppelin, I remember sitting in a pub opposite what's now the Dome, or something else now, isn't it? And saying, John, you'll never get anywhere with a band just stupid now, Led Zeppelin. Who would ever go out and see a band called Led Zeppelin? But he said the money was good and he wanted to get back with Robert Plant, so he left. But he led us to our next drummer, who was Cole Palmer, who later went on to Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And I had to let Cole go. Brilliant technician, but he didn't have the feel for what we were doing. Other people in that band were Mark Burney, who went to Wizard, and several other bands, including Sid Lawrence. Chris Wood, who went to Traffic for many years. We used to hang around a lot with Steve Winwood's gang, so when he decided to form Traffic, it seemed natural for Chris to go with him. And Polly Palmer, who went to Family and a couple of other well-known bands. Dave Mason sang with us for a while, don't you? Dave Mason. You don't. He was one of those kids of the Capaldi mob who latched onto Traffic, and when Traffic got big in America, he became one of these huge Californian laid-back rock stars. In fact, I just read this week he's back on tour in UK, playing really big venues. But he didn't last long with us. Then we accidentally had a hit record called Rudy's in Love. I say accidentally, the singer at the time, Norman Haynes, who amazingly sent me a text about 2 hours ago, not having heard from him for years. He worked in a record store on Sweating High Street, and it was it's a place where all the West Indians in the region came to buy their records, and his boss was West Indian, imported direct from the islands, and so got all the cool stuff before anyone else got hold of it.
Do you remember the name of that record shop?
No, I know exactly where it was. It's on the side of the road. It's been knocked down. Sweating High Street has been decimated on one side. I could find out the name from Norman. I'm sure he'd know. And we followed this. I used to spend every Saturday morning there with him. We'd got to pick him up for a gig and have to wait for a couple of hours for him to get off work. We'd hang around all this great. Well, it was rock steady to start with, before it became ska. And I think rock steady was the nicest of those rhythms. It was really very. We did a lot of rock steady stuff. It really captivated us. And we followed the story of this streetwise West Indian gangster called Rudy, who did all these terrible things to people. And one way or another, we decided to we make Rudy go straight. So we came up with this song called "Rudy's in Love," rather than rooting and gun shooting everybody as he did on other records, and that was a hit for us. We then had a real problem, two problems, one after the other. We recorded a great follow-up for it, a really deliberately cheesy but funny version of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which we called Rudy the Red-Nosed Reindeer, of course, and it was really a spoof rocksteady thing. It was great. We used, on the B-side, we used Bob Lamb, who became producer of UB's, and he's now drummer with Gibbons and Co. He was our drummer at the time. There's some good drummers when you think about it. There's quite a good lineage there.
Where did you record?
Zeller, which is Horse Fair, which would be the pub I was talking about earlier on. Anyway, EMI were the parlour front at the time. We wanted to do it, talked about it, they said no, so I said, okay, we'll show you. So I went off and recorded it, came back to now do you want to release it? And again they said no, because by then they got a sniff of the next follow-up, which was a song which eventually released called Mr. Armageddon, which was totally not in the style of Rudy's in Love. We came to see Rudy's in Love and got what they used to call progressive music thrust down the throat. Whereas it was a good record, it didn't have a better relationship to what we'd done before. So one way or another, we decided to set up Big Bear Records simply to release Rudy the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And the recording cost us about 70 quid, I remember. And we sold 4,500 records the first Christmas, and we re-released it, I don't know, 5 Christmases, 6 Christmases later, and we probably clocked up about 15,000 units, all in all. Some Christmas we'd sell 1,000, others sometimes sell 2,000 or 3,000. But That's when the industry was good, when people with good ideas could do things like that. And really, it was mostly local distribution. When I say local, I mean the Greater Midlands. I mean, we probably sold records in Manchester and as far south as maybe Oxford. But most of them delivering ourselves, just put them back in the car and off you'd toodle. If you're doing a gig in Wellington, you'd call as many record shops on the way to Wellington as you could and drop your records off. And next time you're up there, you'd pick up the ones they didn't sell and credit them with them. But that's when it was a real business.
That's a great story of sort of independence. Like the record company doesn't want to release it, so you just do it yourself.
We've always done that. Everything we've done in Big Bear, was never deliberate. But looking back, we've always done it that way. But Locomotive then released this Mr. Armageddon song, which, funnily enough, again, I heard, is it Brian Matthews on Sunday morning? There's a 1960s show, and I played it last Sunday. And it doesn't wear well. We all thought it was great at the time. It was a time of Procol Harum and Whiter Shade of Pale and very profound but totally meaningless lyrics. And we thought it was very cool, but looking back, it doesn't wear so well. But it really does. I've heard Rudy a few times on the radio. It sounds great. It sounds fresh, just like it was done yesterday. And yet we thought that was a bit of throwaway cheese, and we thought that Armageddon was moving and meaningful. But
well, that's the pop industry, isn't it?
yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Funny what survives and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So Locomotive kept on going for a while, but we limped along after that. The hit record was the worst thing we ever had. We were really hard-working. We once went 1 4-month period, May, June, July, August, without one day off. And we'd play all over the country. And most weeks you'd do at least one double. You do a Saturday or a Friday. You expect one of those days to do a double, if not both. And most of the doubles you'd play somewhere like Hereford at 7 o'clock and get through by 10:30 and go on stage at the Flower Pot in Birmingham at 1 o'clock in the morning. And that was normal. And I remember on New Year's Eve we did 4 shows. Started off with a 7:30 slot at the Town Hall on a Freddie Mac show, for which we'd never been paid. And do another 3 shows, ending at up this really dodgy black nightclub in Small Heath at 4 in the morning. So, but the work was around then. But we were this Locomotive thing. We ran into this split personality. We had great reviews on Mr. Armageddon and hadn't sold a record. Well, hadn't sold a record. It didn't even threaten the chart. It got no. And if a chart hit, you expect to go back the lower reaches at least. We didn't. Then we tried a couple of other things that went in the same direction. The singer was very keen to do his own things, so we split the band. He went off and called his band Sacrifice, very appropriately named as it turned out. And we didn't want to continue Locomotive because by then the new person we got in had got their own musical ideas, and I'd stopped playing by then. While I was in it, I always controlled the direction.
You were the leader.
Always.
Yeah.
Always did what I wanted to do. I always encouraged, I was going to say alloud's the wrong word. I always positively encouraged people to have their own put in. But I guess my role as a leader was more like a producer in some ways. I'd sit back and listen to other people and make my own ideas up. I didn't sort of think I was creative particularly. I had much same input as anybody else. But I would let people develop a bit. When I stopped playing, I got sort of separated from that in a way, and the guys go up and say, "Hey, we've been working on this in rehearsal," which is not how it used to be. It used to be me in rehearsal saying, "Let's work on this," and I wasn't. It changed, and it sort of became almost early country rock, I suppose. So we changed the name. We chose James Thurber name for the band. It's called The Dog That Bit People, and it was great. Although what I just said sounds like I'm criticising, I wasn't. I loved it. It was the first album I ever produced. I produced it at Abbey Road, and George Harrison sat at the back for 2 days, at the back of the box studio, listening to what we were doing. And it was, even now, it's a great record. It doesn't sound English. It's like Crosby, Stills and Nash with balls.
Right.
All music has got
Where were
balls.
if you were working straight for 4 months, where were you fitting in the photography?
I wasn't.
Right.
I had huge gaps in photography, some really sad gaps at the first few years of the Jazz Festival, when I had great people through the festival like Muddy Waters and BB and all that. I mean, I remember once having a glass of beer in the sunshine at the Queen's Head, opposite the old Birmingham Hill building, with champion Jack Dupree, who's from New Orleans, great blues singer, Art Blake, who's leads one of the best modern jazz acts the world's ever known, the Jazz Messengers, and somebody else funny. Oh, Sam Hopkins, Lightning Hopkins. I mean, I didn't photograph them. So, no, the photography was something my mother was a real pioneer photographer, but even more so, her father was. They used to, when I was as a kid, they used to put in a glass-fronted frame, they put the sensitive paper in and the negative, and put it outside in the sunshine, then retrieve it and process it. The light was the sun. Of course, you know how variable the sunlight is. You couldn't say, FP3 always uses 5 seconds. You had to guess it. So I was always brought up with photography. When I went in the Air Force, the first thing I bought when I went to Gibraltar was a camera, a decent camera. And so I did a lot of that, and I came out of the Air Force. Dad, being a Scotsman, wanted to go immediately to Scotland on holiday, because Scotsmen always do this. You know, Scotland's a country of 32 million people, 5 million of which live in Scotland. And so the car broke down in Skegness, and no, it didn't. It broke down in Nottingham on the way to Scotland, and the big ends used to go in those days with cars. And Dad said to the guy in the garage, "Well, where can we go? I want to go to the seaside." The guy said, "Well, go to Skegness." So Dad took a cab and took it all to Skegness, and it was the summer of Cliff Richard's Living Doll. I remember it well, and I fell in love with 240 girls, and I stayed in Skegness. And I had several jobs there. The last one was as a photographer, working for a guy called Alfie Raitt, who's got a legendary photographic company. And he had this habit at the end of as the season went on. Maybe there was 30 of you at the peak of the season, 30 photographers, and each week he'd sack the ones with the lowest sales figures. So in the end, and I stayed there photographing until 24th of October. I was the longest server there. It was great. The sand would blow up Skegness High Street. There wouldn't be a footprint in it. It's like virgin. I said snow. I mean sand. Virgin sand. It was great. And then I went to photograph kids seeing Father Christmas's knee for the same guy up in Barnsley. So photography did weigh heavily. And then I went back to Spain. I worked photography there for a while. When I came back to Birmingham, the reason photography came in then was I fell in a magazine called Middle and Beat, who wanted somebody to write about jazz and blues, and I saw the opportunity to get some photographs published as well. So that's how all that started.
How did I wanted to move it on now to Henry's Blues House and sort of...
Okay, that ties in. Henry's Blues House came about. I'd been on the road non-stop since I'd come out of the Air Force, and suddenly I wasn't playing in the evenings. I stopped playing the Locomotive for no other reason than we couldn't find a good manager. I've been managing the band without particularly wanting to. I've been leading the band, but managing the band is different from leading the band. I found myself having to get the gigs in. I didn't really... Well, it's a 24-hour job, playing, driving. For instance, driving Newcastle was a 6-hour drive in those days, not the 4 hours it is today. So I couldn't keep playing and running the band, so I decided that I'd stop playing. Also, the music had drifted away from jazz, which is what I really wanted to play. And I thought, well, now my chops are in good order, because I was playing every night. Now my chops are in good order, I'll start playing jazz again. And so I left the band and found myself with evenings free. So being of nervous disposition, I couldn't sit at home. The way something happened, I went out and listened to bands. And I found one band called Bakerloo Blues Line from Tamworth. They quickly became Bakerloo. Because of our success with Locomotive on Parlophone with EMI, the doors were open to me to a certain extent with EMI, and just set up their new underground label, as they call it, like a progressive label called Harvest. So I did a deal with Harvest for this Bakerloo Blues Line band, and we needed a gig, and it was at the end of the blues boom, and people were fed up of blues bands because they're all really boring. They all wore the same jeans, all had the same long hair, all wore the same jean jackets as well, and stared at the boots while playing 50-mile long solos, and they all smelled the same, and the world was getting very fed up with them. And Bakerloo were a blues band. They weren't a typical blues band, they were a really good blues band, but they were tarred with that same brush. So I needed to get them working for us, and so I rented the upstairs room. I suppose this is what we said before, we set up the record label because we had to, and we couldn't get a venue, so we set up this Henry's Blues House venue.
I'm just going to knock the level on this down, because I've noticed it's peaked a couple of times.
Okay. But I want to slap my hand on the table.
We'll carry on. So was that the first time I'll just leave that a second. Was that the first time you promoted gigs. I can't believe that was the first gig you promoted. Really?
I've been involved with lots of gigs. I played on them. Of course, you get a good feeling for what to do. I just decided to rent the room, but it lent itself to more than just a gig room.
What was that difficult? I mean, were you able to just say, "I'm doing, I've done this, I've done that"?
No,
Give me the
I went to the guy and I told him what I wanted to do. He said he'd charge me £5 for the room unless it was a success, in which case I'd have for free, because he made the money from the beer.
Yeah.
A small bar, a gig room, a sort of sitting out room, and a semi-gig room. So I decided to, because I was working in photography, I knew people who got film projectors, I decided to show cartoon films in another room. So it was a really nice experience. You come and chill out in the lounge, or you go watch Buster Keaton or Laurel and Hardy. Laurel and Hardy were the stars. And in the main room we had the bands. And I opened it only to present Bakerloo, which I did for every week, I think, for about, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, and then start getting other gigs, and I put other bands in, and we used other bands in support. And we had lots of bands there. We had Status Quo there. They were one of the biggest draws.
Before we carry on with this, I just wanted to explain why I'm so interested in Henry's Blues House, and it's because I sort of think that what we're doing with Home of Metal is all about constructing or reinforcing Birmingham as a musical city and giving it an identity. And what I see, I'm very interested in popular music history generally, and I've observed how places have become legendary and how people have become legendary, and like the myths and the stories associated with those places are the first thing that somebody thinks about when they think of the Wigan Casino, Eric's in Liverpool, the Hacienda, the WAG Club, the Marquee. And that's what I think that Henry's Blues House has the potential to sort of become one of those kind of places. So that's why it's really good. I didn't know about the film thing, and the reason I'm going to ask quite a few questions about Henry's Blues House is because I'm looking for those kind of details where we can really take people back there, as if, so lots of detail, really.
Yeah, well, Henry was a very glamorous Afghan hound who belonged to a neighbour of mine, and so I thought it was nice to name it after a particularly handsome dog. I panicked at the beginning. I over-promoted. I mean, you can't believe it happened. These days it couldn't happen, but we got some great graphics done with good memory cards. It's a cartoon dog. Have you ever seen it?
No, I haven't. I mean, that's also during this session I'm going to be asking, have you got that?
I mean, everyone loved the dog. It was great. It should have been a cartoon character. John Peel used to be on air and say, "Here I am in the BBC Towers wearing my Henry's Blues House T-shirt." Many a time.
Have you got tape of him saying that?
You didn't tape things in those days. No. He was very proud of his. He used to do gigs for us there. If he was in town, he'd come by anyway. If he wasn't doing a gig, because he liked the sort of music we put on, just his sort of music. Yeah. Every band we handled except Locomotive, including Locomotive, I did live sessions for him. He recorded Locomotive for his live sessions when they were in the more progressive vein, not we're now in the more jazzish vein. But we really it was a textbook marketing. I gave myself 3 months to promote it, and which is what you need.
3 month lead time.
Yep. It's what you need. I mean, when you get an idea in a band, the natural inclination is to open tomorrow night, but you've got to do it right. Let the monthly newspapers get it, and we opened, and we had 150 people outside unable to get in. And one of the best nights we ever had was the first night, because we just sort of did so much promotion out of panic.
Were you getting features in newspapers or just adverts? Or?
Yeah, no, we did advertise. Birmingham Mail was affordable, and
so you were advertising Henry's in Birmingham Mail.
Yes,
because that's one of the things I've looked for already, and I've only ever found adverts for Mothers.
No, to a test. Well, we're before Mothers.
Right.
We're the first progressive music club outside of London. Phil Myatt used to come down Henry's, and he used to ask me about bands. In fact, several bands he booked there that did very well. He booked because I couldn't afford them for Henry's. First time Chicago Transit Authority, CTA. You know CTA.
I'm afraid I don't.
They later became superstars of Chicago, but originally they were a great band led by Terry Kath. And Terry's a pal of mine. It's an American band, and it's an eight-piece band. The early stuff like 25 to 6 to 4, that sort of stuff. You've got to hear it. It's like really tough blood, sweat and tears. Yeah. It's really great stuff. And Phil agreed to put them on at Mother's because my capacity wasn't big enough. And he said he kept worrying about how much he was going to make, how much he wasn't going to make it. Nobody would come. In the end, we got 800 people there. It was so hot. There was water concentrated dripping off the ceiling.
This is one of the common. Again, that's an example of
mothers.
A story about mothers.
You've heard that before?
Oh yes.
I've never heard anyone else say it. Isn't that funny?
Right.
Okay. But I remember it well.
Have you seen the book about mothers?
No.
The Mother's Book by Kevin Duffy, who's a community librarian in Erdington.
No, I haven't.
Okay, I can.
If you could let me some details.
I can send you some scans of it. To be honest.
Well, I'd love to get hold of it. I'll collect all that old rubbish. If you could send me the details, I'll try and eBay for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where were Henry's? Yeah.
We're on with a bang. Details of Henry's in the Mother's Book. John Peel gives an introduction. This is obviously when he was still alive, and he says, people don't know it, but the best club in Britain, and I know because I went to them, was in Erdington High Street. Have you got any sort of reviews of Henry's? Any paper clippings other than adverts? Sort of somebody.
I don't know. I know where you can find the adverts. If you look at the column in the Evening Mail, it used to advertise cinema.
Yeah.
The music adverts, it's a single column, would follow on for the cinema ads.
Okay then.
And that's where,
and you opened when did you open?
68 maybe.
68. Okay.
Maybe 67.
What season was it? Can you remember what it was like? No. Okay then. Right,
maybe 67.
There was no point where you had a local journalist coming down to do a feature on this happening club.
It was something that everybody knew about. You didn't after the opening. I didn't do very much at all. We get reviews of the acts there.
Was there any other, apart from Birmingham Mail, was there any other publications that you can remember?
They came and they went, but the Mail was the one we advertised in. There was one called the Dispatch at one time, and another one called the Planet, Birmingham Planet.
Right, because we'll look for this stuff.
Yeah.
And you advertised in the Planet?
No, we didn't. We advertised in the Mail because that's where people knew where to look. And the Mail, you can remember the Mail's probably 300,000 circulation. It's about 60,000 today.
Yeah.
I bet you on a Friday night, Thursday night, Friday night. Thursday because it was jobs. Friday because it was entertainment. They must have done. They did at one point. They peaked at over 300,000.
Yeah.
Whereas the Post peaked at maybe 65, 68,000.
Right.
It's big circulation.
Okay.
Huge. I mean, this country, you don't get a day to doing that anymore.
Okay, so who was DJing? I mean, did you have like a regular DJ?
Yeah, I just play my records.
Yeah.
That's all.
Do you know can you sort of give us a list of what records you were playing? Maybe not now, but do you have it noted down or anything? Well, I'm very interested in that environment that you created.
The first time, anyway, when Terry Katz sent me a white label of his of the first album, first Chicago, because they're called the Chicago Transit Authority for the Chicago. So that was a big number for a while. A lot of blues stuff. We went to, it's not Birmingham, I know, but we had a lot of really top American bluesmen there. Have you heard of Arthur Kruger, Big Boy Kruger? He's the guy who wrote That's All Right Now Mama. Do you know that song? Elvis Presley's first hit. Well, the guy who wrote it, we had Henry's Blues House. We had Curtis Jones, Lightning Slim, Homestead James, Dr. Ross, J.B. Hutto, and the Hawks.
Do you have a list that, access to any kind of list? That you can...
Somewhere I've got the date sheets.
Yeah.
I mean, our biggest bands were Taste, which was Rory Gallagher, and State Square. State Square used to do great business. One time, I don't know, Tom Pickering, he was the manager, and he was transferred to a really posh pub in Worcester called Copper Tops, and he lured me out there. We went to Henry's Blues House, Worcester, on Friday nights.
You used to run a
Henry's
version
Blues House
in
Worcester, yeah.
Okay.
Only because the original landlord in Birmingham moved out to this place in Worcester. The area is called St John's, I remember that. The area of Worcester, by the river. Nice big venue, it never felt the same. We made money there, because the State Square on a Friday night would bring us in 500-600 people. But, it didn't feel that nice. It was a very modern, in those days, a modern pub, like the 60s modern pub.
That's interesting. So you say that it didn't feel right. So what was the feel of Henry's Blues House? How can you describe it?
You see, the way you think, it's a bit like those old honky tonks in the Midwest, but it wasn't. It's a very English rock thing, isn't it? There's a couple of places around now that feel a bit like that. The Roadhouse feels like that a little bit, although it's a bit rambling. His was more compact. Mike Hamlin's places over at Bilston, his place have always felt that way. But his was more constructed than us. We didn't have painted black walls. We had to block out the windows, for instance. There was always a consistent argument with the landlord about the windows, 'cause I didn't really want any light coming in.
Yeah, because it is that curved facade.
And the big tall windows all the way around. Yeah. We had a good stage though. Unusually, so a really a very high stage.
Yeah.
So everyone could see nicely.
The room with the films in, was that blacked out?
Yeah, that would have faced the back. There'd be no outside light coming there at all.
Right. And what time was it open till?
11 o'clock.
Oh right, okay. So it wasn't like a late night.
No, they probably stopped serving beer at 10:30 and could get out by 11. But we kick off on time because people have buses to get.
Yes.
You know, it's very much a student gig.
Yeah. Did you sort of get to know the people who were going regularly?
Very much.
Was it the kind of place where you recognise people?
When
I do this kind of thing, I love working on the door, and I think, well, I'm really lucky tonight. Actually, I'm working on the door because I can make sure that every product that comes through that door is going to start off their evening well by having just making it nice when they arrive. Was it that kind of?
Yeah, very, very much that thing. Very much that way. That's how I first met Sabbath. I got to know them as customers individually.
But literally paying on the door,
yeah,
kind of thing. Right,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about? Well, okay. So we'll move on to Sabbath a bit later. But what about? I found a story on the internet about somebody being naked there one night, like somebody of the time, in the late '60s, somebody just stripping off.
You'd think I'd know that, wouldn't you? No, I would certainly remember that.
Right.
That's probably a. I mean, I was hardly never not there. No, I was almost always there. Only very occasionally would I not be there. I drifted off a bit when Sabbath I drifted off a lot when Sabbath started to make it, of course. But I still ran it for a while. But I lost interest when I couldn't go there every week myself.
Yeah.
And that's the contact you mentioned. It's you book bands because you want to hear them. You know, you don't ask the next day how were they? Did they go down well?
Yeah.
You want to hear it for yourself.
What about some of the other key figures of the era? Halford, Plant, Bonham. Were they?
Bonham would. Plant does. Plant did. I used to book the artists for Ronnie Scott's on Broad Street for 9 of their 10 years, and Planty would come around then as well. Also, I've got another connection with Plant, which is less known. His son was a very keen non-league football player, and my secret love is non-league football. So I had a lot to do with Plant over that.
Right. Okay, I'm bringing out my list. I've got this big list of Earth and Black Sabbath gigs. I don't know if you've seen this before at all.
Where did this come from, I wonder?
One of the many Black Sabbath sites. And there we have the first Earth gig I've found evidence of is Saturday, is the 16th of September 1968. And I wondered if you can start with that moment when they first came through the door. When you first got to know them. I mean, were they noticeable figures? That different to anybody else?
No, not at all. They're just nice guys, really. This is Brownhills, Henry's. What's that?
I don't know. I mean, this isn't going to be 100% accurate.
No, that means Birmingham, not Brownhills, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Station Hotel. It's not Station Hotel. It's Station Street.
Yeah.
And Hurst Street.
Yeah.
Does this come to there's Henry's in Brownhills? Is that possible?
It must be a mistake. I mean, somebody, it's not.
Hang on, what's this then? That's earlier.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
When I saw this, I knew it wasn't going to be 100%
No.
accurate, but I thought it'd be a useful tool for me to bring along for you to see. So, should we go to that? You first meet Black Sabbath as
well, three of them were Henry's members. At one point, I found what the numbers they were. But I don't know what that is now. The three were not Bill Ward.
Will you have any documentation about that?
Oh, somewhere. But, I'm too busy working to have time to do all that sort of thing.
Well,
it really is.
Just at this point, I could say that Home of Metal can provide somebody to help you with that.
I mean, last time was it Lisa?
Lisa
came. She bullied him to just look at photographs. I spent a whole Saturday morning, like 4 hours on Saturday morning, came in here just looking through photographs, and I was burying myself in photographs, and I'm only going back about 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, I've got boxes everywhere for, well, that's the wrong era, but that gives an example of what photographs there are around.
Oh, right, okay.
And that's about 85, I think, onwards. Almost all to do with jazz.
Yeah.
But all over the office there's piles and piles of boxes and things like that. With not this one, this is, I don't know why Russell keeps all the empty boxes. We produce a magazine called Jazz Rag. Have you ever seen it?
I have seen that, yeah.
These are the... Well, yeah.
Is that something that you would consider at all?
I don't know. It needs me. It's...
and that's where we would find... You see, as I say, to sort of construct and give something an identity, those objects are very useful in order to do that, because it's kind of, if you've got the story, which we have from you and other people, but then having the object to back that up, that's what makes it sort of real kind of thing.
Yeah.
Certainly, seeing the membership card, the logo, and so on, is going to be very important to bringing Henry's to constructing that identity for Henry's.
I wouldn't know where to start with that.
Well, we'll be in due course going to the Birmingham Mail and finding all your pre-publicity.
Yeah,
we'll do that, and we'll let you have the copies of it. But
this really sounds funny to me. First, I mean, if these dates are correct, I've no reason to think they're not correct. We were only 2 months in front of Mothers. I can't imagine where that came from. I'm not. These aren't ringing many bells with me.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that they're incorrect at all, and that's very early. I would have thought Iommi coming back to Earth.
One thing which I've
got the record. It was happening for them, but when Iommi left, I was Dust-Up. You ever heard of Dust-Up Bennet? No, Dust-Up Bennet's a one-man band from Lichfield, a really good pal of Sabbath and a good pal of mine as well. He was a real stalwart at Henry's. I booked him for years and years and years at Henry's. He and I spent one night explaining to Iommi why he shouldn't go and join Jethro.
Yeah.
So, and the reason was because Sabbath were happening. And I'm amazed if it's that early.
This is one of the problems with these kind of histories, isn't it?
What's age are we?
I don't know. No, I don't know.
That was after the release of the record, I'm sure.
The Marquee.
Are they saying that Sabbath played the Marquee?
Yeah.
You could easily be in the Highsmiths Coliseum because I was very close to them, because Dave Clemson from the Bakerloo Blues line became guitar player with Coliseum.
Right.
So I remained close to them. So we could easily have got a support slot with them. I'm just amazed because the record was out. What's the date was the record out?
No, this is 69.
Yeah, what
the record was out in 1970, 13th of February.
And it's only, well, that's weird to me. It really is weird. Because we didn't really play London properly until the record was charting. Well, that was called. Yeah, I know. That was Big Bear Folly. I'll write that down for you. I know that clearly.
Okay, yeah.
Actually, we did it. We did the Marquee of Big Bear Folly. I remember now. On Saturday, I bought a Sabbath album because somebody told me there's an old photograph that I'd long ago forgotten existed. And there it was. It's upstairs. I'll show you afterwards. Of the Big Bear Folly. Why am I writing it twice? It's the same thing. We used to put all our bands together and showcase each one of them like a 20-minute set, and then have them all together at the end.
A bit like Jules Holland.
A little bit before Jules Holland.
Shall we just go back to...
these don't mean a lot to me.
Yeah, okay. Don't worry.
Yeah, Bakerloo, that makes sense.
Shall we go back to you first meeting these guys?
Well, that was it. They just said, can they do it? We've got a band, can we do a support slot? So I said, yeah. And we paid £5 fee for a support slot in those days. And they said, we don't want the £5, can we have a Henry's Blues House t-shirt each? And that was their first fee. As Sabbath.
Have you still got any of those Henry's Blues House
I think
t-shirts?
so. think so.
Would that be the kind of thing which is in your boxes?
Probably in my wardrobe.
Because again, you see
I probably still wear it.
that story.
I wear all my old t-shirts.
Oh, right.
That was a gig with a jacket big band. That I won't go much further. Is there a year on that?
Yeah.
Oh, really? 1992.
92, yeah.
Yeah.
You see, that's a classic. I've heard that story before, that Sabbath were paid a T-shirt each for their first appearance at Henry's, and to have a T-shirt to include that story, we can include that story in the story which we're telling, but it's going to be so much better if we have the T-shirt to go with it.
I'll have a look around.
Right.
I'll check what I wear every day.
Okay. So they played their first gig. And can you remember any details about that first gig?
They were okay. They weren't stunning. They were okay, and we booked them back repeatedly because they were nice guys, and I was friendly with them before I booked them. I probably wouldn't have booked them had I not been friendly with them, and they improved. And I got Bakerloo working regularly by then, so I used to offer people who book Bakerloo, I'd offer them Sabbath. And also these big folly that we did with all the bands. That was a great way of showcasing the bands. You could play venues then that would maybe take 800 or 1,000 people because you've got 4 bands on.
And all go up into one band.
we used one back line. It was quite well worked out. But the drum feature at the end of the evening, it would have had Bill Ward, sometimes Pete York. Remember Pete York?
Pete York, I mean that.
The original drummer of the Spencer Davis Group.
Okay.
Him, because he joined Bakerloo.
I'm thinking Peter Tork from the Monkees.
No, Bakerloo's drummers were John Hinch, who went on to Judas Priest. Then a guy who I met only a couple of months ago, Keith, somebody. Then Pete York.
So obviously, members of Priest were hanging out on that scene as well.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And bands like Climax Chicago, as they were called then.
Yeah.
Climax Chicago Blues Band.
I'm interested
in
associating the development of the heavy metal sound with what was going on at Henry's. That's why I was asking about the sort of the playlist that was happening in the.
We weren't playing it. Remember, it was a venue which we booked at one extreme heavy metal, at the other extreme blues, and what status quo be when they were just a good time boogie band.
Right.
But it's all sort of fairly related stuff. But the music, the records we play were my collection, which is heavily blues leaning and a lot of American rock.
If you were going to do a Henry's Blues House compilation, a 40-minute or 50-minute album, I mean, I'm interested in that. If you can't, I can see why you can't. You don't have like a set list from the nights themselves.
I'll just take an armful of albums down and do it from that.
I'm interested in getting that from you actually at some point.
I'm a bit rough on dates, as you can probably tell.
No, but I just mean a general guide of the kind of records which would be playing at Henry's Blues House.
A lot are American. I didn't play much jazz stuff. I played some of the sort of Kansas City stuff, which is very accessible. Some Jimmy Rushing and Jay McShann. Because lots of that was very, very blues rooted. But I wouldn't have played the McShann with Charlie Parker, for instance. That's another direction. But I'd played a lot of American rock things, and I'm trying to picture my whole. I tell you, also I'd probably played some of these funny Jamaican things. I really like people like Young Growler, and early Desmond Decker and people like that. But they'd have thought of me as being quirky for doing that. They wouldn't have been standard fare. But I tend to stagger into it.
What was the can you remember the audience reaction to those early Sabbath Earth gigs?
Yes, I would say growingly enthusiastic, noticeably increasingly enthusiastic. It wasn't sort of bang, it's a road to Damascus moment on gig 1, but by gig 2 or gig 3, people were coming back and saying how good they were, and when are they back again? It was a grower. It wasn't totally instant, but it grew very quickly.
What about the sound? How did that grow? How did that grow and develop?
We did a deal with Lyndon Laney of Laney Sound for equipment. As soon as we got decent equipment, behind them, they sounded a lot better overnight.
Can you tell us a bit more about that deal?
Local company called Laney Sound, run by a guy called Bob Thomas, who used to promote it. What's that pub they just knocked down at Erdington by the island?